Okay, well, I am going to go ahead and just jump in and get started since this is typically scheduled for 30 minutes, and we want to make sure that we let everybody get back to whatever other things that they have to do today. I'm sure everybody has long lists, but just want to, first of all, welcome you all and thank you for attending something Education Advanced is doing a little bit new this year, and it's been really enlightening and fun to get to have these conversations with educators. And with Test Town specifically, we are obviously dealing in the world of assessment and testing. And so today's topic and this month's topic is about ensuring equity through student testing accommodations. So I want to introduce myself. My name is Laura Miller. I'm an account executive with Test Town and EAI, and also Carrie Bartholomew is joining me too. She is also another just interesting resource to get to have in our meetings and everything that we're doing, because she was a district test coordinator at a school district last year too. So is truly fresh off of dealing with all these things too. So thank you for joining us. Our agenda for today will be just to introduce our incredible guest speakers, discuss our questions, and then have any live Q&A with any guests, or even just kind of continue to bounce some ideas off everybody's mind. So without any further ado, I want to introduce our incredible gurus, longtime assessment specialists, guest speakers. We have Gail Long, who's the coordinator of accountability and assessment for Hurst Euless Bedford ISD. That's a lot of words altogether. And then Carla Schaefer, our Director of Assessment and Accountability in Victoria ISD. If both of you wouldn't mind maybe just taking a second or two to introduce yourself, your experience, and maybe how long you've been in the education world, all that good stuff.
All right, Carla, I guess I'll go first. This is my 28th year in education, and it is my 9th year as a district testing coordinator. Prior to that, I was the campus testing coordinator for 13 years as an assistant principal, both at, well, 3. I started at junior or middle school and then high school, and then I spent my last 9 years in elementary. So I kind of have a wide range of testing experience in the campus testing coordinator world. And then, like I said, and then last 9 years, I was in a smaller district first, actually where Carrie just last was. And then now I'm in HEB, which is a much larger school district. We have about 22,000 students. So.
Thank you, Gail. This is my 26th year of education. It is my 6th year as the district testing coordinator or director of assessment and accountability for Victoria ISD. Most of my teaching background is actually in elementary and early childhood, for that matter. I was mostly a kinder and first grade teacher. I do have experience as a CTC at the elementary and at the middle school and at the high school level. When they dropped me on the high school campus, I thought I'd moved to Mars, but I have enjoyed my district testing coordinator position. It's been quite the learning curve, but I'm happy to be here.
We have quite a bit in common.
That's one thing that's been fun about these meetings, is just bringing people together from different regions of Texas and different states across the country, and finding a lot of commonalities as we go and as we talk. So that's been a fun part. Well, thank you both for being here, and we will just go ahead and jump into the guiding question and let you kind of, I guess, this is a broad question. There's kind of a lot to this. You could think of it from a district perspective, from a campus perspective. You can think about it in utilizing tools. So I think what we'll do is just whoever wants to go first, jump in and start talking about your processes and the topic. And if that leads us to some additional thoughts as we go, then we can do that too.
Gail, would you like to go first?
You go ahead.
Okay. As I said, most of my background is early childhood, so I didn't have a lot of accommodation experience as a teacher, because most of my students did not do any state testing. But once I got to to an assistant principal and CTC position, then of course I did. As a CTC, it was my responsibility to make sure that I was aware of the accommodations and that the students received the appropriate accommodations. As a teacher, of course, your job is much different, because you need to make sure that you understand the accommodations and that the accommodations that you select mirror what you are, with the supports that you are providing in the classroom. Now, as a DTC, it's a very different job. You know, I don't sit in any ARD meetings or any of those 504 meetings. I don't make any of the decisions about accommodations for the students, but it is my responsibility to make sure that everyone understands the accommodations and how they apply in the testing world. I do spend a lot of time trying to go to either train my campus testing coordinators, or to also make sure that I'm providing the information to, say, our 504 coordinators and our ARD facilitators and diags and people like that, to make sure that they're fully aware, especially when we have changes throughout the state.
Yes, and I would reiterate everything you said. I think the big thing for us sometimes is making sure the special ed teachers and the other teachers in the classroom know that a student can have a classroom accommodation that doesn't necessarily translate over to having a testing accommodation. So I find a lot of times when I'm having conversations with teachers, we have a list and I can see what they're able to use in the classroom to help them be successful on the test, but not necessarily be able to use that specific thing on the test. And then so they're like, well, they can't use it on the test, so I'm not going to use it in the classroom. So it's kind of been a teaching point of, yes, you want to use it in the classroom because it's a teaching point, for those students to guide and help them. And then also on the other end is making sure that they know just because they can use it in the classroom doesn't mean they get it on STAR. So it's kind of both ends of that spectrum. As far as making sure the CTCs have the proper test accommodations, and I don't know what your turnover is on your CTCs, but we have 2 years ago, I had 17 new CTCs out of the pot. So we promote from within usually. And so our assistant principals become principals or move on to other districts to become principals. And so we have a lot of training to do. Now this year I only have 3 new ones. So it's a light year for us, but teaching them where all the accommodations come from and all the different pieces. So, the EL accommodations, the ART accommodations, the RTI or I forgot our SAT meetings, so our student assistant team meetings, just kind of knowing where all the accommodations come from and making sure that everybody is trained on those accommodations, kind of like you said, communicating that to all the different people that lead these meetings and groups, knowing where. For me, for Test Hound, I've been using Test Hound for a long time, and funnily, I used it for a long time, but I think not as much as I should have been using it from the beginning. And because the form that shows for subject and all of the accommodations that the kid gets, I didn't understand that the accommodations that are in the system make up that form, the words that are on there. So like I had a designated support that also I had an online test delivery accommodation, and they were showing up depending on how they were mapped in both places. And so this summer I did a lot of cleanup in Test Town, and I will say that's the most important piece for me is I just cleaned out all of the accommodations. I made sure I worked with actually a new employee to Test Town. I've worked with Karen Reed on just getting my accommodations just spot on and my mapping perfect. And so it's a lot cleaner this year than it ever has been. And also getting all of my, I don't know why I thought they magically appeared, but the performance tracker is another piece. And I know this isn't the part of the guiding question, but the performance tracker is a big piece, to get testing correct, not only for accommodations that are each student, but just who to test. And so just cleaning all that up, I think is the most important part, and teaching, making it part of our daily habit to go in and look at the map to make sure that we don't have any mapping errors to look at for the day. And then having our APs, our campus testing coordinators, do the same thing, is every day checking those things to make sure they have the most up-to-date accommodations for a student. We've had some growing pains with accommodations. Sometimes they're not in there. So when they get a test town accommodation alert and they'll go in there and they'll say, well, this student is special ed, they didn't get, they're supposed to have XYZ and they don't. It's kind of been a thing. Well, let's look at the system. And in Frontline, which is the system we use for special ed, it was in draft form. And so it's kind of a teaching point. When something's in draft form, it doesn't come over. So just all the little pieces. And I think it just are important.
I'd like to piggyback on what Gail said. One of the things that has helped us as a district, we were not an online testing district last year. So we have a lot of cleaning up to do because we have a lot of old accommodations that were paper-based. And so one of the features that I really love to be able to use in Test Town is I can actually download those files so that I can put some Excel filters on it, and so that I can look and troubleshoot students that still have old accommodations, and I can reach out to the campuses, like right now I'm doing that for December EOCs to let them know, hey, you have old accommodations, y'all have to go back to meeting now. Otherwise the student won't, is not eligible for that accommodation because the student's not taking a paper test. So that's been very, very helpful to us.
That's awesome. Well, I was going to kind of jump into, what test town processes or forms do you require for your users, for your campus users and for what's the most beneficial. But I want to also ask too, just because Gail brought it up, with the transition to Cambium, what have been in online testing in general, what have been some of your best practices that you have maybe implemented with that transition, either with test town, through test town, or even without, just to make sure all the accommodations are good to go and turned on for the Cambium Tide system. Carla, you want to jump in?
Sure. We absolutely love the features that Test Town has where we can upload the test attributes. We had some campuses that actually chose to be online testers last year. And so I was able to roll it out to them on how the campus can now do the uploads for test attributes. I think that's a very important piece because now they can actually look and troubleshoot as well. Again, as a DTC, I do not know what the accommodations are for the students on a campus. I'm not sitting in those meetings. I don't make those decisions. And so it helped us try to transition this year because I wasn't doing the whole district last year, but we did have some campuses especially at the elementary level that were willing to test the waters for us. So that helped us a lot. And now we're all doing it, and we're doing some interim testing right now. And, I'll get phone calls throughout the day. I'm trying to get my test attribute and something blah, blah, blah is not working. And so I can get on a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting and help walk them through it so that they can get those uploaded themselves. I think that's very, very beneficial for the campuses to be able to do that.
That's great. And Gail, I'm not sure if you're good to go, if you're, if you need to, if you need to do something else, or if you want to join in on that topic too.
I just got put back to the beginning.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, exactly what Carla said, actually. And we've been doing a lot of the cleanup as well. With December, looking at December, we didn't have a whole lot of paper testers. We've gone online 2 years ago when we had the option to go online. But yeah, so we've done, I just say ditto to what Carla was talking about because we've done the same things here.
Okay. Well, let me ask you then to following up post-testing, what are processes, let's say testing's happened and we're kind of trying to make sure post-testing everybody, is good to go and squared away. Do you have any processes when it comes to accommodations or just verifying that things did go the way they're supposed to, or what does that look like? Or maybe even too, I know, that can be a big irregularity sometimes is an accommodation irregularity. How have you worked to prevent those irregularities from happening over your course of time of either in your position or in using Test Town?
make sure that the CTCs run the master accommodation reports, and we have them do them separate by program. So they run a 504 report and they give it to their campus 504 coordinator to check that, because again, even my CTCs don't sit in those meetings. And so that's a that we've had in place since we've had Test Town. Those need to get signed off on before the testing, and we try to have that done at least 2 weeks prior to testing. But they give it to the 504 coordinator, they give it to the SPED coordinator, and then like an RTI or an SAT coordinator, which is typically the principal, because they're usually the one that knows about that. But again, they run those reports separately so that someone who should be in the know can sign off to make sure that those are correct. And it's a process. I mean, it doesn't happen in one day. They print those reports out and they give them to those people. They mark them all up. They go back to meetings. They reprint the reports until they get it all cleaned up.
And can I just jump in right here and say too, that a lot of times the irregularities that we had came from the last minute decisions. Is that something that y'all deal with? And, you know, it does help with Test Town to have those reports to sign off on, but do you guys put deadlines or some kind of an understanding? I know that, like you mentioned 2 weeks, Carla, and that is ideal, but invariably you're going to have somebody that says, oh, this was supposed to be this way, it didn't get put in the ARD, we need to go back. Like at that point, do y'all have any like magic advice on how to make sure that those last minute ones don't cause irregularities? Just the, you know, kind of what you mentioned, Carla, but I just thought I'd ask if y'all kind of had the same issue.
So we have a 2 week, the same 2 week Carla talked about, but we are pretty strict about it. And we do have 1 or 2 come up district wide, but my APs are pretty, I mean, they're pretty stickler about that. Is if there is a change going to be made, it does not happen without their knowledge, period, the end, or the accommodation doesn't happen, because we always go back to, has the kid been practicing it in the classroom? And if so, why wasn't this mentioned, you know, well before the 2 week mark? So we're pretty, I mean, we're pretty strict on that. We're not going to go and do something that's not going to be best for the student, but we're also going to make sure that our people are following those timelines as best we can. We haven't had irregularities based on that in the last couple of years. I have in the past had that because, like you said, Carrie, somebody will, you know, jump up and go, oh, they needed this and it was supposed to be in there and it's not. But yeah, we're pretty strict here in this district about the 2 week time frame.
Carla, is that kind of where you feel y'all come from too, about the same?
Absolutely. Again, I think the most important thing, especially, you know, if I was speaking to CTCs, is don't hope that those things will be corrected. You need to stay on top of it. You can't wait until, you know, 10 days before testing. You need to be working with your program coordinators way before. We're kind of in a pickle right now because, bless our heart, our LPAC representatives had their in middle of the year training yesterday at the Region Center. And so I had to reach out to the principals so that we can get all of our LPACs done by hopefully Wednesday of this week. I know that, you know, that's a quick turnaround. Of course, we knew about that beforehand. We knew that the region was going to be doing the training rather late. And so they've already been having the conversation. So now it's just kind of a formality, hopefully. But I wanted to make sure that the principals were on board and that they're providing support as well. So we in essence, it all boils down to communication, and don't assume anything. And if things aren't getting done, you need to be reaching out to the right people to make sure that they do get done.
Great. Well, last question. And I'd love to throw Carrie this your way too. Just a piece of advice. We have so much turnover in assessment coordination, either at the campus or the district level, but let's maybe focus it at the district level. A piece of advice to anyone that's a new district test coordinator on just accommodation management and how to make sure that process is as streamlined and as easy as possible.
you want me to address that first?
Sure.
I'll take.
I want it
Okay.
from all three of you. You're all
Okay.
experts.
So yeah, anytime that you can have systems in place that everybody is clear on, so that whenever you get new people in, everybody's not having to reinvent that wheel. That for me, that's why Test Hound was super important as a district testing coordinator, because it's a built-in system. Like you have something that we can all work towards. I would sit down with my special ed director, my ESL coordinator, my 504 coordinator, and we would sit down and look in Test Hound at how it's actually going to look whenever it comes out on the accommodations room roster, because a lot of times there's a million different ways to say things in systems and the accommodations. And just like Gail was talking about earlier, making sure that there's a true understanding of difference between classroom accommodation and testing. What your state allows, whether it's Texas or anywhere else, you're limited for the accommodations to what the state allows for testing, and just making sure that everybody's on the same page for that. And again, with Test Hound, it does provide that systematic approach from everybody to feed into. We know what it's going to look like, and then have, trainings and systems in place for your campuses. So I'll pass it on to Carla or Gail, either one.
Well, I would just reiterate what Carrie said, because again, it boils down to communicating and making sure that everybody is on the same page and everybody understands the accommodations and they are all speaking the same language. And Test Hound, like she said, does help you do that.
And I would definitely say the same thing, but also within Test Hound, reading all the help documents, looking at the chat and Google, in the chat, searching for what you're trying to do. I will tell you, it probably took me longer to figure out mapping and just to wrap my mind around mapping, because instead of figuring out on my own, I just called for help and they said, oh, I'll just help you and do it. And at the time I was like, yay, I don't have to do it. And then it came like, oh, now I don't know how to do it. So I would definitely say, call and ask for help, but you want to do the process yourself when you're getting into Test Hound and accommodations, just so you understand the entire process from start to finish and how the mapping works.
Great. Well, thank y'all for all of that. I want to go ahead and just see if any of our attendees do have any questions that we can answer for them. There's the Q&A feature in Zoom. There's also the chat feature. So just going to pause for a second and see if there's anybody that'd like to offer any feedback or ask any questions. And while we're waiting, we can always hop back and do that. But since we're already kind of getting down to the 30 minutes goes fast, especially when you'll have so much valuable information to share. I'll just go ahead and highlight a little bit more about some of our other tools that Education Advanced provides. Our whole company, the goal of what we're doing is to try and provide operational efficiencies in many different areas of education, typically ones that are challenging, that sometimes there are not processes in place until we come alongside the district and work with you to provide you the tool to help. So we do have a curriculum tool. Cardonics is our master scheduling tool. Test Hound, obviously, we've been visiting quite a bit about in this webinar, since it's about assessment. So assessment management and coordination. A couple of new ones are Pathways, which is a graduation tracking tool we're very excited about. And we even have an evaluation, a staff evaluation tool to help streamline that process too. And an aside, my husband's an assistant principal, and I'm learning how he's trying to do these evaluations, and it's not super streamlined. So excited about what we're able to provide educators, and want to continue to try to make a difference in people's lives as best we can and provide these tools and resources. Our entire company we are all former educators in some form or fashion, from support to bringing new districts on with our tools. So that's what we're here to do and what we're here to help with. So I just want to thank especially Carla and Gail for your time today and for your expertise. We appreciate you all very, very much, and look forward to more conversations. And Thanksgiving break is coming. Everyone's excited about that, and it'll be full steam ahead into December retesting and all the things that go along with that. So again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you all specifically for your time, and have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll talk soon.
Bye. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.